Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch.
I think what makes me nervous is having to really rely on what's internal. Yeah, if no one likes my insides, I'm gonna be pissed. Like, what the hell? Damn it all makes sense.
Okay, I don't know what is going on. She's laughing about it. So that's one indication that she's light about it and it isn't destroying her self-esteem. But this is reminiscent of what Colleen was talking about last season, about, at least according to Colleen, people would approach her because of her looks or because of her career as a ballerina working in ballet. And she would go on a couple dates and then they would not be interested. And she concluded, and I don't necessarily think this is true, but at least she concluded that it was because she didn't have a personality, or I don't know what word she said, but they didn't like her beyond her looks. And that was very difficult for her, very sad for her, very hard for her. And she would cry about that. And there were events on the show when Brennan and Cole rejected her in the pods. I think she chalked it up to that potentially, of just like, oh, there we go again. People don't like my insides. And if they could only see me, then maybe I'd get one date, but then that sort of thing. So I'm looking at my notes here, Micah, she was wondering that, I think, but she seemed more light about it. But I don't know, we'll keep an eye on that.
Kind of like, I don't know, it tickles my brain. It's weird. As a scientist and a more analytical person, I expected to see flaws and holes in the experiment, and it's surprisingly sound. It's as if placing a boundary in between people has actually removed a boundary.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing from a scientist talk from their perspective, because it is, and they even refer to it as an experiment, looking at what would happen here, what are the outcomes, what are the experiences, is it better? Because the part of it that they don't really get into on the show and describing, which I'm always curious about, is the fact that they're completely isolated. I mean, that's probably the most interesting, notable part of it. They've talked with other people before, they've dated other people, so that element isn't new. But for the first time in their life, they don't have access to the outside world. They don't have their phones. They can't call people. They don't have the internet. For the very first time in their life, I think it's 7-10 days. So that's got to be strange. That can, as I've been hypothesizing, really galvanize the brain and the soul and the spirit towards dating, right? One of the forms of therapy that, I don't know if they still practice in Japan, but I know that they did in the past, is when people would be anxious or depressed, one of the therapeutic practices was to isolate the individual in meditation for 7 days. But by the end, a lot of people, when they would emerge, according to the research that I saw, they would feel ready to face the world. They missed being able to interact with the world. You know, when things are coming at you all day long, your work, your kids, your spouse, the internet, the world, the news, your family, your friends, you know, everything's just, it's coming at you. And all you're doing is this, and then you're given a chance where none of that is happening, then you are rejuvenated. You know, it's like a vacation, right? Like an extreme vacation. And it seems that we might actually all need something along those lines, because it's not humanly possible to be constantly running on that mental and emotional treadmill. So on this show, they have that, right? And that slowing down and that deprivation of all those things might massively amplify the love feelings or the attraction feelings towards these other people.
A lot of people are pretty shocked that, like, oh, you've been married twice? Like, yeah. I was just so not appreciated, and I don't ever want to get to that point again. You know, I don't want to have to burn myself out loving somebody, just getting scraps in return.
Okay, so one, there's nothing wrong with being divorced, of course. Something like 40% of first marriages end in divorce, and 50% of all marriages, whether it's first, second, third marriages, end in divorce. So think of it as a flip of the coin to some extent. And it makes sense. It's hard to know if you're going to be compatible with someone for the rest of your life. So it's hard. And there's nothing wrong with being divorced. There's nothing wrong with being divorced twice. The stigma around divorce is ridiculous, and it needs to go away. We even just saw a little bit of it in terms of the reactivity to when she was saying. The other thing is is that she's talking about how she's tired of being taken for granted. I can't remember the exact words, and that she's often giving a lot and not getting much in return. Now, I don't know, but there's no way to know, so total speculation, but that is a sign of someone with preoccupied attachment. It could also be just a sign that she picked people that just weren't very compatible, or people that were jerk faces. You know, there's a lot of different reasons as to why that is. But when I hear that, I hear someone who is pursuing a lot, and that is a sign of someone with preoccupied attachment for reasons that I've talked about before. But, you know, I don't know.
You know, I don't want to have to burn myself out loving somebody, just getting scraps in return. I don't want a repeat of that. So I put time and effort into thinking about what I want for the future, and I'm just so ready. Bye.
Let's go, let's go. Hello, hello.
Also, I will say that, at least anecdotally, I forget the research on this, that people who are more on the preoccupied side of things are more likely to move quicker in a relationship and get married quicker. Again, I'm not saying anything about her. There's no data to suggest, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Love that.
You get 5 stars from me.
Mwah! You just don't know what flavor you're gonna get until you get in there and you're just like, ooh, I like this, or ooh, that flavor's a little too strong, or that flavor's too bland for me, like, ew.
I'll get bloody noses out of nowhere. I've gotten one when I was making out with a girl once, and I got blood on her face.
That's got to be the best, worst first date thing we've seen on this show. I mean, if you wrote a comedy sketch, you would think that was absurd that someone would say that. Yeah, I get a lot of bloody noses. One time I was kissing someone and I got blood all over her face. It's like, yeah. I mean, you know, each to their own. And I appreciate honesty. There's nothing inherently disgusting about this. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. Maybe there's a lid for that pot. Maybe someone's out there just like, hey, didn't appreciate the story, but I like his honesty and I'm looking for honesty, so he's the one for me. He's the lid to my pot.
Oh, what the hell, no.
I like wearing leopard print.
You like wearing what?
Leopard print. You still there?
I do my thing.
I'm a stripper.
Yeah, okay. So now this guy's saying, wait, did this guy say he's a stripper?
And leopard print.
You like wearing what?
Leopard print. You still there?
I do my thing.
I'm a stripper.
Oh my God, ew, I hate that.
I go by the Zack Attack.
Oh. So I grew up in a...
Now, I will say, as a person from Seattle, if I were to guess if there was something among the various different mild differences on average between people from Seattle and people not, I would say that nerdiness and maybe some below average social skills might be a little bit more prevalent. I don't know. The reasons for that are that in Seattle, we attract a lot of tech people, a lot of engineers, a lot of software people, a lot of computer people. So there's a lot of that, which, you know, doesn't necessarily mean that you are socially on the under average side, but I'm not going to say it doesn't indicate that.
Alaska.
Have you ever murdered anybody?
Have I murdered anyone? I have not murdered.
So this leopard print guy, he's either trolling or he's trying to become one of those, I don't know what you call him, those kinds of noticeable reality TV show people. Maybe it was a dream of his, or he sees an opportunity to become a noticeable reality TV show individual, and so he is asking some ridiculous questions. I think he's either trying to make fun of people, or there's, I don't know, something's fishy. I smell shenanigans. It seems insincere. I like leopard print. Have you murdered anyone? I mean, come on. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Let's talk about self-awareness. I'm often talking about a connection with the self, a connection with who you are, what you want, what you need, this kind of thing. And how for some people, since they weren't attuned to enough as a child, they don't have a strong connection with the self, and therefore they have to go through a lot of therapy to get in connection with the self. But really, I don't know anyone who doesn't cut themselves off from their needs. None of us were 100% attuned to 100% of the time. And of course, that's where therapy can help everybody. And as a therapist, I've witnessed clients discover mind-blowing aspects of themselves that really helped them in their lives. Well, that's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery wherever you are. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and flexible to your schedule. So discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
Oh, stop it.
I'm a criminal defense lawyer.
Oh, wow. I grew up in Alaska, so I'm a fisherwoman.
Wow.
Are you Japanese? Korean?
No.
Chinese? Are you short? Let me guess. 5'1".
Yeah. I can't. Okay. So even if that was your goal, to be flamboyant or interesting or noticeable or controversial, you would have to have something different about your personality to be able to step out that far on a limb and that annoyingly. It's like people who can prank call often, or people who go on 4chan and just really lay into people. There's something about your personality, and it's shown. And I don't get a chance to talk about this very often, but you're on the internet right now. And so when we're on the internet, you have to expect that there's a much higher prevalence of people who are commenting, who are participating in online discourse, who suffer from psychopathic personality or antisocial personality, individuals who lack empathy for other people, individuals who might even take pleasure in being cruel to others, sadistic individuals, people who get off on actually annoying other people or hurting other people's feelings, people who will just say whatever they want to because they just feel like it. People who get bored really easily and they might actually consider it entertaining to bother other people. You might run into someone like this in the real world, but it's rare. You might go your entire life only running into one or two of these people. Maybe people that you didn't even know were like that because you didn't interact with them enough to even experience those kinds of behaviors from them. But when you're on the internet, because of how many people you interact with, one, but two, because of research shows that psychopathic people are much more likely to interact online, and they're much more likely to comment and more often. We've done research on this sort of thing. And it stands to reason, because if you are someone who suffers from psychopathy, who suffers from antisocial, then in all likelihood, you have, these individuals have experienced a lot of negative consequences. It's a myth out there that psychopaths are these genius Machiavellian planners. The vast majority of psychopaths, particularly those that I've treated, their lives are train wrecks. So for these individuals, they often learn it's much easier to get their needs met online than it is to get their needs met in person. And so they will engage in a lot more online bothering of other people in various different ways, sometimes very noticeable ways where they're actually threatening to kill you or something like this. But, lower grade comments would just be making fun of you or trying to get under your skin or asking questions like this.
Joking with all these girls, about things like being a stripper. As I was doing it, I was realizing, I have 9 days to pick a wife. And that means if I want to take this seriously, that I'm actually going to have to be vulnerable.
Okay, so this is a good turn. Zach, the attorney, is frequently saying, we're watching him, they ask, what do you do? And he's like, I'm a stripper. And I found a lot of people had different reactions to him, which I found interesting. I don't know what it is about me or maybe you. If someone said they're a stripper, I'd be like, okay. It's notable. I guess I would have questions about it, but not like, oh my God, you're a stripper. What's wrong with being a stripper? I don't know. There's lots of different careers in the world. I think a lot of people would assume there's something about his personality that would make him undateable if he were a stripper. Oh, that doesn't make any sense. Does anyone have any scientific data on that one? Maybe, so would there be, maybe there are some average trends that you might find, but I don't know. I've known plenty of dancers, strippers who are just like everyone else, so I wouldn't think anything of it beyond that. So the thing that I thought was that his career is that he's a criminal defense attorney. Attorneys, in the beginning of my career, they would really scare me because in court proceedings or hearings, they would have this way of just really going after you. And it's intimidating and scary and traumatizing. My heart, fight or flight, for a long time, if I was in a hearing with an attorney, it would cause me to have a traumatic reenactment of intimidation or really even threats. You know, some attorneys, they're not above threatening you. They might even say, look, if you don't answer this question, you're going to be held in blah, blah, blah. And it's terrifying because it's their world. They know how things work and you don't. You know, there's various different experiences where you might be in a situation like that. But anyway, there's a lot of different associations with attorneys, you know, including for myself. And I imagine that for him, he has a mixed reaction when he actually tells people what he does. I actually, for a long time, would not tell people in casual introductions what I did for a living. I would try not to bring it up because it would often produce, I would say about half the time, it would produce something that was negative from people. They would be like, oh, one, I would try to avoid telling people what I did. And two, if it did come up and I didn't think it mattered if I told the truth or not, and I'm not one to lie. I don't like even white lies. I'm not, you know me, I'm always saying don't lie. But what I would say is that I worked for Microsoft. People would say, you know, oh, what do you do for a living? And I'm just like, I'm never going to talk to this person again. And I just didn't know. Particularly there were certain groups of people that were more reactive, people outside of Seattle, people more conservative. I don't know. Judgments I have, I suppose. With those people, I would be more apt to just be like, oh, I work for Microsoft. Because no one, in Seattle anyway, no one would ever ask a further question because no one cares. So I'm guessing for him, I'm just speculating, total speculation, that for him, he's had similar reactions from people. So I wonder if, one, he doesn't want to answer the question, so he sort of passively, maybe passive-aggressively answers in this weird way. Maybe for him, he's like, I'm a stripper, and then they're like, whoa, that's weird. And he's like, oh, I'm just an attorney. And then that contrast sets people up to not react negatively to him, you know, because it's like, oh, okay, you're not a stripper. Okay, that's good. And then people are more likely to be positive about his career. I don't know. But anyway, so he is now reflected on the day before, and we just heard 9 days, so I think it is 10 days, it sounds like, the total experience in the pods, and which is interesting, right? Just 10 days, a long time, but not long enough probably to meet someone. But anyway, so he is, you know, to really make sure that you found the right person. But anyway, so he's saying that he wants to be more, he decided last night, look, if I'm going to make this work, if I'm going to find my soulmate, I have to be more vulnerable, which is 2 thumbs up for that.
I'm gonna have to be vulnerable. I'm gonna have to confront demons that I have not.
What are you so scared of?
So my mother was a single mom. I moved from place to place throughout most of my childhood, and my mother was a stripper.
There's nothing wrong with having a mother that's a stripper. There's nothing wrong with that. We have a very, very weird society that somehow considers that to be a problem. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. There's nothing immoral about that. There's nothing destructive about that. It's a job. Now, could he have been negatively impacted because of it, because of bullying or stigma? Yes. Probably so. Could she have been involved in other things? Maybe he'll get into that. That could have been ancillary to being a stripper that could impact his childhood. Yes, and there's probably a greater chance of that happening.
Yeah.
I have not.
What are you so scared of?
So my mother was a single mom. I moved from place to place throughout most.
The other element to this that's actually in terms of just what he's mentioned so far that I'm much more keyed in on as that can be traumatic is moving around a lot. Are there kids who move around a lot and adjust fine? Yeah. But on average, I have seen so many people who have come into therapy primarily because their family moved around a lot, because their dad was in the military or worked with the military and went to various different places around the world. And although there's some positives to that, you get to see the world, you get to experience new things, but the ripping away, for some of you, you can absolutely relate to this. You were the new kid in school. You just moved to the neighborhood in the 3rd grade, and it takes a while to find your place in the school. You're getting to know the other kids, the teachers, the community, especially if you move from another country where you don't speak the language of where you're at. It can be very, very difficult, right? You finally get into the swing of things. You finally find a couple friends. You finally find your people. You found a way to make sure the bullies don't target you. You find those few teachers that you like. You start settling in. You start feeling safe. And then boom, you're ripped out again and you move to another town. You do that repeatedly, and there's a lot of ill effects that can come from that. People can develop, even though it's not rational, but they can develop schemas that they don't deserve to have friends. They don't deserve to have long-term relationships.
Like, I can remember being a kid, going through the drive-thru and my mom not having enough money to buy me a meal, and her breaking down into tears. And she was an amazing woman. And she died.
Well, quite a tragic story for him of poverty and of death and grief. So yeah, he's being vulnerable. Let's see how Irina reacts here.
And their family, judged me because of how I was raised. And so I want to marry someone who's marrying me because they love who I am as a person.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. I don't know what he means by they judged him, but we could imagine, and normally I wouldn't imagine this, but having watched other reality TV, it's absolutely within the realm of possibility that he would meet someone, they fall in love, and then there's this question about his history, and he doesn't want to talk about it because the stigma, it finally comes out. The details start to spread through the family. The family's like, oh, I don't know if I like this guy. I mean, look where he comes from. And you just think, what? All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.